Hello everyone and welcome to another Weekly Wisdom. Now recently Google inside of Webmaster tools, or should I say Search Console, that's one for the original G's out there, they've added in a bunch of page speed insights straight into Search Console. So today what I want to show you is how to use your Chrome browser to run a Lighthouse audit, but also dig into a bunch of things you can do in the site's code itself to speed things up. Now this isn't going to be super techie, but it's kind of intermediate, so strap in and let's get into it. Okay, so first and foremost, this is our website here. Let's have a look at our case studies page because there's lots of images on it. So first and foremost, to get a true understanding of a new person coming to the site, I'm going to clear the cache. The cache is essentially all the memory stored in the browser. I want to delete that, so when I click Command R to reload, you see that that image didn't quite load as fast as it did first time round. So let's dig into that and see what's actually going on there. So I'm going to hit function F12 in order to get into the console itself. When you open it up, usually most SEOs, you guys will be very familiar with doing like control find to see like, is there canonicals on the page, are they broken, or why is it not ranking? Is it because there's a no index tag on there or something like that? We're all very used to looking at the site's code itself, but when it comes to the order of things loading, and things like the first contentful paint, where do we find that information? Okay, well, let me show you. So first and foremost, let's jump into network. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload this guy again. Whoa, there's a bunch of stuff. Great. So what we're seeing here is something called the waterfall. So essentially when you've got all those resources on a page, it's essentially from the browser's point of view, it's downloading them one after the other, after the other, after the other. Now, and when we're doing speed optimizations, there's something called the critical rendering path. The critical rendering path is essentially of all the things that are in this waterfall, is there any big massive resources at the front that are stopping everything else from loading? Now, if you use things like HTTP2, that becomes less of an issue because it's like a multi-lane, multi-threaded thing where they can download lots of resources at once. And with HTTP3, something I'm going to confess I don't know a lot about, that's going to be even faster. But let's look at this website. So what are the big things that kind of jump out to us? Okay, what I want to do is quickly click on time, and I want to get all the things that are really heavy in terms of loading at the very top, so I can start seeing, well, what are these things that are blocking this site from moving quickly? And I start going through things, I'm starting to see things like SVGs and JPEGs and a bunch of random scripts. There's even some scripts that are not firing. We'll get into that in a second. So this is all very well and good, but what if I want to dig into the individual bits and check them out? Well, you see this menu bar up here. If I click on IMG, interesting. So here's all the images that are loading on the page. In fact, one of them is a 304. Don't know how that happened. So here's what's really interesting to me. So we can see right at the top here, we've got all these logos, but on top of that, we've also got just random big ass images. So cityoflondon.jpg, which is this background image you can see here, and CMC Markets logo, which is there. So what's happening is we've got an image. Let me just make this bigger so you can see it. So on this particular site, this image here is loading, but in order to make this, which looks like one, this is actually two images. And not only that, if we look at this little thing here, see how that moves as we like go over it? Look, read. So when we do that, it's all moving and animated, but it's a really lame animation. You can barely tell that it's happening. That's JavaScript. So we've got two images for every single one of them. So we've doubled the page size, and then we've put some nonsense JavaScript on there to make a little kind of animation that doesn't really add any value. So here's the first thing we're going to do. Kill these images with fire. We're going to turn them into a single image and load them up like that. And we're going to squash them down because like this is way too big. Let me look at the sizes. Yeah, man, like 100 bytes for a lot of this stuff. They're too big, so we need to squash them down. Okay, so moving on a little bit. When it comes to running speed audits, there's something called Lighthouse, which is typically built into Chrome. So let's run an audit and let's have a look and see some of the kind of backwards and forwards of it. So what it's doing when it's running this audit is it's taking me offline, trying to load the page. It's loading it through a 3G network, through a 4G network. It's loading it through a bunch of different device types in order to give me this score. Okay, so there's a bunch of things straight out the gate that we need to have a look at and understand what it means. The big thing for me is first contentful paint. So in terms of the amount of time that it's taking to physically load this page. So it says it's just slightly less than 2 seconds. The other thing we want to look at is time to interactive, which is this thing here. So you'll notice when we've done the waterfall previously, when I go back to our waterfall, when I was talking, like that's the page effectively loaded, but you can see down the bottom left there's 50 requests and only half of them have been fulfilled. So that's time to interactive. So that's everything that's physically loaded and the page can be interactive and I can actually use it. So although it looks like it's ready to rock, actually there's a bunch of stuff in the background that's still going. So that's something we really need to have a think about and take care of. Now, you might be seeing all these things and be like, Ross, how do I even begin to understand what all of these different things are? First contentful paint, time to interactive, first CPU idle. Oh, God, it's painful. Well, top tip, press the burger menu and it's literally just going to expand it. It's going to give you the exact definition of what's going on, and see these little learn more things. It's going to take you to a Google Doc, which is going to show you, well, here's all the exact things you need to do in order to fix it. So as we're going through this, it's a very good idea to understand what a lot of this stuff means. First and foremost, to understand that, you need to understand what your code's doing. So I'm going to take you back to the waterfall, and now what I want to show you is when I look at all of this stuff here, can I see the code that isn't actually firing on the site? Let me show you how to do that. You go into More Tools, and then you go to Coverage Report. And what that's going to do is open this little thing here at the bottom. Right, here's the interesting bit. Things in red, code that is not used. It's being fired and it's blocking things on the site, but it's not being used. The green bit is code that's being used. Cool. So what do we do and how do we actually make any changes? Well, if you click on it, what it's going to do is actually going to load up the exact code that it's having bother with. Now, you see these numbered lines, it's just the lines of code in the document. The green bit means it's being used, the red bit means it's not being used. So from my point of view, what I want to do is I want to find, and it's all JavaScript, of course it is, because JavaScript is very expensive to render and it takes a bunch of time. I want to be looking at that and I'm thinking, oh, can I maybe concatenate any of these JavaScript files into one file? Can I chop out some of the stuff? So if I've got a JavaScript file and only half it's being used on most pages, I need the other half because that could really cut down the amount of time it takes to load. So jumping into this and understanding the code that's used and the code that's not used, really essential for you to do optimizations. Now, how do you get this to your developer? Well, I would literally just be taking a screen recording as I'm doing right now and get it over to them. Or, guess what? Oh, lovely little export button. So you can actually export your coverage report, take it out and then get it in a deck or get it in a business case and show your developer, hey dude, there's a bunch of code on the site that's loading, but it's never actually used and it's killing our speed. Okay, so that was your very short introduction to how to use Inspect Element inside of Chrome to work out where to find speed optimizations. We've covered Lighthouse, we've covered redundant code, and we've covered the waterfall to understand the critical rendering path. So what I'd encourage you to do is go and try this on your own site and start playing around with it and stop using those tools that give you a speed score, because ultimately if your site loads in under 2 seconds, you're doing a great job, and digging into this, you can maybe shave off a millisecond here or there, which is going to make the experience for your user much, much better. So that's everything for this week's Weekly Wisdom. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below if you're having any speed issues and we can audit them for you live, perhaps in an upcoming webinar. But until next time, we will see you later.